A blowout win over the massively shorthanded Pacers is just what the doctor ordered. How the Timberwolves did it? Three big things from the Wolves win over the Pacers next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of the Daily Locked On Wolves show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. It's the postgame pod for the Timberwolves win over the Indiana Pacers on Tuesday night. A little bit later in the show, we'll talk about tonight's game, looking ahead, have the Wolves clinched a playoff spot, and we'll talk about all that stuff. The Wolves play again here tonight, so we'll cover that later. But we got to start with three big things from the Wolves win over the Pacers. Yes, the Pacers are embarrassingly shorthanded. It's really the shell of an NBA team, if that. But the Wolves didn't have Anthony Edwards or Jaden McDaniels, and it was still a bit touch and go at times. So we'll break into what happened here in this one. And I'm going to give you three big things. We're going to jump right in. And then as the show goes on, we'll hit individual studs and duds toward the end as well, as we always do on the post-game pod. All right. So first, we have to acknowledge all the guys missing. I'm not going to list every single Pacers player, but just know that it's everybody. Like, obviously, Tyrese Haliburton out for the season. Other guys have been out for a while, like the TJ McConnells of the world. More recently, Pascal Siakam and Ivica Zubac have both been ruled out. I think probably both for the season, among other guys, right? Like, you look at this roster, it's Obi Toppin. It's, I don't know, to a lesser extent, guys like Jay Huff, Micah Potter, probably Kobe Brown, like fringy NBA rotation type guys. There's just not much there. And outside of a short little blip recently, I think they won 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5. They've had losing streaks of 13 this year, 16 games this year. Overall, they were 18-60 coming in. So the Wolves had no business making this a close game at all. And they did it, to their credit. The Wolves didn't have Anthony Edwards and they didn't have Jaden McDaniels, otherwise healthy. So obviously a lot of dudes missing on both ends of this one. But the Wolves jumped out and looked really with it in this game early. And they built a 15-point lead in the first quarter. It was down to 8 by the end of the first. But the early energy, I think, kind of set the tone, and it allowed them to just kind of, like, if they had come out of the gate lackadaisical, I mean, who knows, right? But they forced some early Rick Carlisle turnovers, the head coach of the Pacers. They were jumping passing lanes. They were active. And that leads me to my first of my three big things. And this is an observation with a sub-observation. Now, my number one thing is turnover city. That's what I'm calling this game. This game was turnover city straight up. The Timberwolves had committed 20 turnovers. The Pacers committed 23. So a 43 combined turnover game. This one was ugly, right? Still, the Timberwolves, actually, you know what? I'm going to turn turnover city into two different points. First, I'm going to hit it as a positive for the Timberwolves defense, and then I want to talk about the positive side on the Wolves offense. But these are two different points now. So turnover city, when it comes to the Timberwolves defense, I would say that early in this game, Minnesota's defense was opportunistic and active, and it set the tone for the game. And yes, the Pacers are the shell of an NBA team, and yes, the Pacers were sloppy. However, I thought the Timberwolves forced the issue. And specifically, we saw a lot of it from Ayo Dosunmu. We saw a lot of it from Bones Hyland early in this game. Jalen Clark. Clark ended up with 4 steals in 18 minutes, 3 steals apiece for Mike Conley and Ayo Dosunmu. Bones only had 1, but it was essentially an open floor. It wasn't a pick six, an open floor interception that he threw to Clark for a dunk. Like, a handful of those types of plays that are just simply laying in the weeds and hustling, playing hard. Like, we don't always see that happen for this team. It's how an antless Timberwolves team has to play, even against an opponent like this. You know, a team that likely won't get to 20 wins on the season. You still have to play hard. And we've seen the Wolves not do that too often. And I thought the defense was actually really good in this game. And it wasn't just simply like Rudy Gobert guarding the paint. It was the perimeter defense. It was the activity level, which is probably what I would underscore is just how active. And I would even use the word tenacious the Timberwolves were on the perimeter creating their own luck with some of these 50-50 balls, creating their own opportunities. And I know the Wolves only ended up with 13 fast break points in this game, but they also scored 34 points overall off of 23 Pacers turnovers, which is a really nice number. I mean, that's what, a point, that's like 1.3 points per game, essentially 1.3-ish points, or not points per game, 1.3-ish points per possession. I beg your pardon. Like that's a reasonable return on those 23 Pacers turnovers, even if not all of them were in the open floor. The Timberwolves turned them into profit, and that was really positive. So turnover city early, and it benefited the Timberwolves in this game. Now, the second piece of turnover city, my second of my three big things, was the Wolves committed 20 turnovers in this game too. But I could handle it because it meant there was a lot of ball movement. Some of it was sloppy. I'm not explaining away 20 turnovers. I'm not giving Dosunmu a pass for 5 or Mike Conley a pass for 3, which, by the way, they were the only two guys that had more than 2 individual turnovers. Conley had 3, Dosunmu had 5. Not what you would expect, except for they were basically running the show for the Wolves in this game with no Ant and no Jaden McDaniels. I can handle the turnovers if you're A, scoring and shooting the ball well, which they did, and we'll talk about that, and B, turning the opponent over a ton too, and route to 36 points off of 20 whatever, or 37 points off 23 opponent turnovers, or whatever I said it was. The offense for Minnesota, the Wolves shot 52% from the field. They were 41% on threes, and they made us 27 assists on 46 made field goals. It's not like a crazy number, but it's a good number. And to me, that meant that the Wolves, save for a handful of just straight sloppy ones here and there, which happens, a lot of them were because the Wolves are overpassing or they were trying to be aggressive, moving the ball in the half court or even in the open floor, even though, again, they only had 13 fast break points. But I thought it was indicative of a team that knew they had to share the basketball to win. And that's positive. I mean, Julius Randle only squeezed the trigger 13 times in this game, which is, I guess he only played 28 minutes overall. But, I mean, he was sharing the ball, 4 assists, only 1 turnover. Ayo had only 1 assist. He had the 5 turnovers. Dante had 4 assists to 1 turnover. Conley was 3 and 3. So, like, the assist and turnover numbers were up. We saw guys being, and I should mention Bones Hyland, who we'll talk about too. 7 assists and no turnovers for Bones Hyland. The Timberwolves were pushing pace for the most part. They were sharing the basketball for the most part. And you can live with some of those turnovers as long as you're shooting lights out. And we've seen how many games. I mean, the Pistons game the other day, the Wolves just could not make open shots. And that was part of my preview for this game was, look, if you just make open shots, you're going to be just fine. And they did. 41% on threes. Early in this game, especially when they built that initial 15-point lead in the first quarter, we saw Julius Randle hit threes. We saw Dante DiVincenzo hit a 3 or 2 in the first quarter. And they were open. They were generating the open shots, and they were converting them. It led to the 15-point late first quarter lead that was, 8 by the end of the quarter. It was 10 at halftime. And then Minnesota got it to 18 in the third quarter before the Pacers got it back down, I think, into high single digits, like 8, 9, maybe 10 points in the third quarter. And then the Wolves had their big 25-5 run at the end that essentially put the game out. Not essentially, it did put the game out of reach toward the end of the third quarter. But the turnover city stuff in the first quarter, it's palatable when you're playing a team like this Pacers team. It's obviously not how you're going to win a playoff series, but at this point, pretty hopeful that in a playoff series you have both Ant and Jaden McDaniels out there, and you don't have to play this high variance, faster paced, style brand of basketball, if you will. I do want to talk about actually a couple other defensive elements. I got my third of my 3 big things to get to. We'll talk about the Timberwolves defense in this game and how they performed, because I think it was pretty decent overall. We talked a little bit about forcing turnovers, but also free throw attempts for the Pacers, how they did a little bit of damage themselves. We'll talk about the Wolves defense. We'll get to individual studs and duds later, and then we'll talk about tonight's game and what's up next in the Western Conference standings, what to keep an eye out for. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here. They start next week. Every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You could bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, the extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. If you're a regular listener to this show, we'll talk about all those things. The Wolves, by the way, at Orlando, this is obviously not playoffs, but they're at Orlando the second night of a back-to-back on the road tonight, Wednesday night. They're actually 6.5-point underdogs. And I know Orlando's probably got a little bit more to play for at this point, pending the conclusion of Phoenix Houston on Tuesday, which is ongoing right now. However, I don't know. I don't mind the Orlando matchup for this Minnesota team minus Ant. Like, I think it could be interesting, but right now Minnesota's 6.5-point underdogs on the road at Orlando. But if you're on FanDuel, it'll make the entire playoff experience next week more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is, well, it's a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve. Well, you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. A reminder, if you're an everyday listener to Locked On Wolves, you can join the Everyday Club. You get Locked On Wolves ad-free. Plus, you get access to the members-only Discord chat, which I'm in on a daily basis. You can join at lockedonwolves.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes. Again, that's lockedonwolves.supercast.com. Okay, so the last of my three big things after my turnover notes on both sides of the ball, we got to talk about Ayo Dosunmu and Bones Hyland in this game, and that duo in particular. Again, we're seeing this kind of breakneck speed that these guys play at, and coupled with Donte DiVincenzo, who hasn't really played all that well lately at all, and again, didn't shoot the ball very well in this game. But in general, I thought played better than we've seen him play recently, which again, factoring in opponent, all that stuff, fine. But I thought it was a decent Donte game. It was a really good Bones game. 19 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 4 of 7 on threes, got to the line 6 times, had 7 assists and 0 turnovers. Bones Hyland did, combined with Ayo Dosunmu, who had turnover issues. But I mean, Ayo was 9 of 12 on twos, and it wasn't only like full court, coast to coast. He had the poster dunk on Huff, which was awesome. And so certainly some of that Ayo turbo button stuff, but it wasn't only that. We saw some half court attacking. We saw a little bit of everything from Dosunmu, a little bit more of the version of him that will occasionally, he didn't do a whole lot of the half court scoring in Chicago. He certainly did it in college a little bit. And we've seen flashes out over the first 2 months of him in a Wolves uniform. But for him to go 9 of 12 on twos and do some of that damage in the half court is really positive to see. And then combined with Bones, like I know Ayo had 1 assist to 5 turnovers, but you combine their 2 lines, you're talking about a total of 43 points on 26 shots, which is super efficient. Combined 5 of 12 on threes, we'll take that. Combined 8 of 9 on free throws, take that. Combined 9 rebounds, combined 8 assists to 5 turnovers, and a combined 4 steals. That duo, especially in a game with no Anthony Edwards, that's a massive performance. And by the way, Bones scored his 19 points and 7 assists, put up his 19 and 7 in 21 minutes off the bench. I mean, he did work in a short, as we like to say, Bones got busy in this game. I mean, he took care of business very quickly in his amount of time on the floor. Ayo played 33 minutes, but I thought he was key. Obviously, the third quarter burst and poster dunk was nice. And then, I had some stuff in the first quarter that went really well too. But the combination of those two guys creating chaos, along with Donte DiVincenzo, who does some of those little things really well, gives you a trio that all can get hot and score like crazy. I mean, all three of them, right? DiVincenzo, Dosunmu, and Hyland can all just get hot and score, just be hotter than a pistol at the drop of a hat, and impossible to stop. And at least in the case of DiVincenzo and Dosunmu, they all do other stuff. Now, Bones, to give Bones some credit, he's actually been pretty solid defensively so far this season. He's had stretches where he's actually been like legit good, and I thought he was good in this game. So not something I thought I'd say 3 months ago, but like Bones has some of the do stuff ability as well, where he does some extra things when he's going well. When he's not, he doesn't. And that's kind of the difference between somebody like him and Donte DiVincenzo, whereas DiVincenzo's actually been probably less consistent overall this year than Bones Hyland, but at least Donte does a few extra things here and there defensively, off the ball, etc. I think the assist numbers are a little more consistent for DiVincenzo, and with Bones, it's more of a roller coaster. There's highs and lows. But like, I mean, I mentioned that I felt like Donte played better. If you actually just look at DiVincenzo's game log, I mean, Donte had 6 boards, 4 assists. You got to go back to 3 weeks ago in OKC to find the last time Donte had more than 4 rebounds in a game. He had 6 in this one. You got to go back to March 18th. So also nearly 3 weeks ago, the win over Utah. So 2 games after that OKC game to find the last time that Donte had more than 3 assists in a game. And he had 4 in this game. So doing a few additional things was good to see from Donte DiVincenzo. I mean, that's now 4 straight games that he's failed to make failed to make more than 3 threes in a game. So I mean, he's been bad during this 3-game losing streak that they went on prior to this one. So hopefully this sparks DiVincenzo a little bit. But anyway, the point is the duo specifically of Bones and Ayo in this game, and then if you add in Donte, the trio of them, that's a trio the Wolves are should want to rely on in the playoffs, even if and when Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels come back somewhat healthy. Like, the Wolves are going to have to try and play fast and press the issue, especially if they end up in a matchup like the Denver matchup, which we've got plenty of time to talk about, and we will. But it's very likely, increasingly likely, they match up with the Nuggets in the first round. And I think forcing the issue is going to be very important for this team against Denver. Obviously, it's dangerous, but like, you're going to be the underdogs anyway. So try some stuff. See if you can't, upset the apple cart a little bit, which I think will be the goal, to be sure. All right. So a couple quick things that I want to hit. So I talked off the top about the defensive intensity the Wolves played with early in this game, forcing the 23 turnovers from Indiana. They also allowed 31 free throw attempts from the Pacers. And something I've talked about, kind of like kept a pulse on this year. The Wolves have obviously struggled to defend without fouling more often than not. But a lot of times when they're fouling more, the defense is actually better. And it's like a light, I want to be very clear, a very light version of what OKC does with the, hey, they can't call them all, we're just going to be physical. They won't call every foul. And ultimately, if we give up, 25 free throws in a random game, or in the case of this game with the Wolves, they give up 31 free throws, nearly twice as many for the Pacers as the Wolves shot. If we give up some free throws along the way, there's another, 15, 20 possessions that we're impacting with our physicality that we're not going to get called for fouls. And we'll take those possessions where they're not going to score to the 25 to 30 free throws that they're going to get, because we know they'll miss a few and whatever. We'll pick our poison with who we're being physical with. We'll get in their heads a little bit. We'll try and get them worked up at the refs, like all that stuff, right? That's all baked in with a team like OKC. Now, to reiterate, the Wolves are not doing that anywhere near at the level of what OKC does it at. They're not as good at it. They're not nearly as good defensively. So don't hear that. Just hear that that's the overall philosophy. That's the best example of the team that is just, legendarily good at it, right? They're Hall of Fame level good at the idea of like, we can foul like crazy and come out ahead, right? So I don't necessarily think allowing a ton of free throws is always a bad indicator for the Timberwolves. And again, like Chris Finch has talked before, like, we're struggling to defend without fouling. Like, in a perfect world, you defend without fouling, right? Like, that's how you should play defense in basketball. That's how this should work. But there is an element to, in today's NBA, getting under a guy's skin and making the refs blow the whistle in a lot of cases. And to me, it's an indicator a lot of times of how hard the Timberwolves actually played defensively. And I think it was in this game. I think it was pretty representative. There we go. Pretty representative. That's not right. You know what I'm trying to say. I thought it was a good representation of how hard the Wolves played defensively, allowing the 31 free throws. Fine. They only allowed 9 made threes, right? Like, I mean, you can live with that. They only allowed the Wolves 1 point to the paint, barely, but they 1 point to the paint by 4. Like, they were physical to a point and just said, all right, like, you guys aren't going to make enough shots. As long as we're physical, we turn you over 23 times. You get 34 points off those 23 turnovers. We'll pick our poison here, and we'll let Ethan Thompson shoot 10 free throws, and they did. We'll let Micah Potter shoot 6, which he did. We'll let Obi Toppin shoot 5, which he did. Quentin Jackson shot 6. It's too many, sure, but it's a good indicator of the effort level for the Wolves defense, and it was there in this game quite clearly. Okay. Let's close with individual studs and duds. We'll peek at the Phoenix-Houston game and what that means in the West standings. I'll lay that one out. We'll talk briefly about tonight's game. We'll do all that here next to close out today's show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Quo. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, a text, or opportunity. The part that I love, everything lives in one clean thread. Calls, texts, voicemails. The whole team sees the conversation, so nothing falls through the cracks. And the AI summaries save serious time by logging calls and highlighting the next steps automatically. It just makes your business feel more organized and responsive. Make this the season that no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's Quo, QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Okay, individual studs and duds in this one. Not too hard to figure out. We talked already about a couple of these guys. Ayo Dosunmu has to get one. I know that the turnovers were a little bit ugly, but look, you lead the team in scoring with 24 as a starter in a bit of a different role than you're used to being in. 9 and 12 shooting from 2-point range, which is big. 5 boards, 3 steals. Kind of outweighs the 5 turnovers. I thought what he did to impact the game. And also, like, if you want to talk individual player, like, plus minus, Ayo is a plus 22. Nobody else was better than a plus 19. Like, he was really good in this game. So props to Ayo Dosunmu. And I would also argue setting the tone early was super important, and Ayo was a big part of that. Another stud for me in this one, Bones Hyland. We talked about him already. I thought he was awesome. 19 points on 9 shots in just 21 minutes, 4 of 7 on threes, 5 of 6 at the line, which is a high volume of free throw attempts for Bones Hyland. 7 assists, no turnovers, 4 rebounds, 1 steal for Bones. I thought he was great, a plus 15 in 21 minutes off the bench. And then Naz Reid. Haven't talked about him yet on the show today. Really nice to see Naz playing well. Obviously, no secret he's been struggling. The 3-point shot has simply not been there. The shoulder injury clearly bothering him. Obviously, really just been a tough season overall for Naz Reid, and really had a bad game against Charlotte on Sunday. But he finished with 17 points on 10 shots in this game, made 3 threes for just the second time in a game since, I mean, he did it a few days ago, the loss to the Pistons. But before that, the last time he had at least 3 threes in a game was February 20th. So for just the second time in the last 6 weeks, Naz Reid had 3 or more threes in a game. And he was very good in this one. 17 points, 2 boards, 1 assist, a couple of steals in this game for Naz. Tied for a second best on the team, plus minus of a plus 19. So I go Bones, I go Naz, I go Dosunmu. Not a stud, but going to shout out Julius Randle. I thought tone setting wise, he was good early. Not super efficient, 19 points on 13 shots. Obviously, that's fine. He was just 2 of 6 on 2-point shots in this game. 4 assists, though. And just 2 boards in 28 minutes. But I thought Julius did a good job of setting a tone early. So just wanted to shout that out. Duds, don't really have any. There were some rough stretches in this game. I don't think it was any 1 or 2 players that were necessarily party to that. Like, I don't know. And by the way, in another example, plus minus being very noisy for a game, Jalen Clark played 18 minutes, was only a plus 3. He had 4 steals, though. He was 5 of 9 shooting. Like, I thought Jalen Clark played well. I don't really have any duds. I thought Mike Conley was good early. Rudy was fine. If I had to pick somebody, maybe Rudy, just because I think this is a game he probably should have done a little more in, and he had just 5 points on 5 shots, but he had 12 boards, couple of blocks. No duds really in this one. All right. So as I record this, Phoenix and Houston are playing late third quarter, and it's a 1-possession game. So I don't know, by the time you listen to this, unless you listen to it immediately when it's posted overnight into Thursday, or into Wednesday, excuse me, you're not going to know, or you'll know the result of this game. If Phoenix loses, then the Timberwolves are locked into the 6th spot in the West. Now, if not, all the Wolves have to do is win one of their last 3 games, and they will be in the 6th spot in the West anyway. So they just need one more Phoenix loss or one more Minnesota win. If you're a baseball fan, you're familiar with the term magic number. That's all that needs to happen here. Is the magic number is 1. So the Wolves are very close to locking down the 6th seed. They will very likely play the Denver Nuggets, who have won 9 straight and are currently locked into the 3 spot in the West. The Lakers have now lost 3 straight and, of course, are massively depleted with no Luka, no Austin Reeves for at least the rest of the regular season and likely into, if not through, the first round of the playoffs. So sitting here right now, there's actually a slight chance that Houston could get all the way to 3. It's pretty unlikely, but they've won 6 straight. So Minnesota is almost for sure in the 6th spot. Okay, they're 2.5 behind Houston for 5 with three to play, and they're 3.5 up on Phoenix for 6 with essentially 3.5 to play, right? Because we're halfway through the Phoenix game. The Wolves have 3 more. Denver is 1 up on the Lakers. So there's still a slight chance that the Lakers get to 3, but it seems very unlikely. We could be looking at Denver, Minnesota for the, 3rd time in the last 4 years, if I'm remembering that correctly. They were the 8th seed 3 years ago, and then they played them in the 2nd round 2 years ago and did not play them last year. So that looks very likely. We'll, of course, have plenty of time to talk about it. We'll probably do a crossover with Locked On Nuggets next week. But as we get closer, start thinking about that matchup. Seems very likely we're going to see it. In terms of what's up next for the Wolves, 3 to play. That's tonight at Orlando, which I referenced earlier. The Timberwolves are 6.5-point underdogs at the Magic. Of course, looking at the standings, what does Orlando have to play for? Well, look, a lot, actually. They're currently tied for 7. They're 7-8 in the East, and they're 1 back from 6, which is Toronto, and getting out of the play-in entirely. They're also only a half game up on Charlotte for the 9 spot. If you're in the 9, you have to play the 9-10 game, and then you play for the 8 seed. So, of course, Orlando has more to play for even than Minnesota, and Orlando's also won 3 in a row. So and of course, I referenced this game earlier, but the Magic crushed the Timberwolves just a few weeks ago. It was kind of part of this downturn for the Wolves. They scored just 92 points in that Saturday matinee against Orlando. The Orlando defense against an antless Timberwolves offense is admittedly terrifying. And this is a relatively full-strength Orlando team, like Desmond Bane, Paolo Banchero. These guys are playing. So I get why the Wolves are underdogs, and a back-to-back, right? But still, I don't know. I don't really hate this matchup for the Timberwolves. I think it's interesting. I think that that if the Wolves defense plays how it's been playing, if they get a good game from Rudy, he tends to play pretty well in the second night of back-to-backs for whatever reason. And we talked about this the other day, but the Wolves defense has been good. Over the last 2 weeks, they have the worst offense in the league, but they have the second best defense in the league. And Orlando doesn't have a good offense. So this could just be a really ugly, old school, not super old school, but we could be looking at a 95-90 game. And that the Wolves will just have a chance to win ugly. And I think that's on the table. So the live postcast following the game, of course, you could tune into that right here on YouTube. If you're watching on Locked On Wolves on YouTube, or you can hear the audio at Locked On Wolves, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll be back on Thursday with the Locked On Wolves, with the regular show, the post-game pod. We'll talk Wolves Magic. We'll get you ready for the weekend. All that is upcoming on Thursday. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. A reminder once again about the Everydayer Club. If you listen every day, you can get this show ad-free by signing up at lockedonwolves.supercast.com or clicking the link in the show notes. You'll also get access to the Discord channel as well. Talk all things Wolves with myself and a handful of other Timberwolves fans that love to talk Wolves on a daily basis. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the very same Locked On Podcast Network. your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.